The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
DJ Baller, you killed this.
Ladies and gentlemen, multiple words trying to come out there. Welcome back to College Football Coast to Coast. It is my favorite weekend of the season. There's only one college football game on this weekend, and there's one college football game on today, because today is Saturday, of course. It is America's game today at Gillette Stadium, 2 o'clock, Army-Navy. Both teams, first time they've had the same record in a little while. They're both 5-6, non-bowl eligible teams, but they're playing the best game of the year today, and I'm ready for it. It's my favorite one. Tyler was like, I don't like this game because there's not a lot of offense. This is my favorite game because I don't like a lot of offense. I love defense, and these two teams have really good defenses, especially when they're up against each other. So yeah, it's Army-Navy week. I'm pretty hype. I'm pretty gassed for this one. And of course, we got to talk about the Heisman Trophy a little bit here in this show. And of course, the biggest news of all surrounding college football right now, or the last week, has been the CFP's top 4. The College Football Playoff Committee, who I said we need to get rid of a long time ago, has come out with their top 4. And this is the last time you'll only see 4 teams in the college football playoff.
Thank God.
Thank goodness this is almost over. It'll give a little more meat on the bone for us for future shows too, and it'll just make the college football season that much longer, Tyler.
Yeah.
So, and it makes the off season a lot shorter for us, but it's always a good thing too, though, because I feel like we get to the on a side note here, I feel like we get to the off season, we run out of like material to cover because like it just gets so dead. Like at the end, national championship happens, and then it's just dead. And there's just nothing. And then there's maybe like 2 stories a week, and that's about it all the way up until, I would say, early August. And then we kind of get into it, and that's kind of where we're at. But with the state of college football right now. So we'll be a few more weeks in the, later in the season, I feel like in future years, especially next year. So it'll be different for us about this time next year. But of course, we'll start the show off with the college football top 4 reaction. Tyler, the top 4 is.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise to anyone. Number 1 seed is Michigan, 13-0. You pretty much knew that either 1 or 2 heading into this weekend. You just really had to look at that SEC championship game with Georgia and Alabama. Michigan took care of their business against an Iowa team that's going to be heading to a great bowl game. So number 2 is Washington. Washington, like I said on last week's show, I thought that they really had a great opportunity with a win against Oregon. They did. They looked dominant in that victory. I know the score was closer than that game was, but, man, Washington really put it on them. Washington loves being underdogs. I mean, they're going to be an underdog against Texas, so don't count these boys out. This is a defense that's definitely been improving. They had a slow start to the season. Their offense, Michael Penix. Penix is one of the Heisman finalists. We'll see if he wins it. But, yeah, this Washington team is definitely scary good and definitely one of my favorites to win the national championship. Number 3 seed is Texas. They won the Big 12. Really what vaulted them to number 3, I believe, was that win in September against Alabama. The committee really respected that victory, especially with Alabama winning the SEC, and that was who the number 4 seed was Alabama. there was definitely a lot of controversy where should Florida State be in. They were a 13-0 team. They won the ACC. They took care of business. Alabama, on the other hand, had that one loss to Texas. Not really a bad loss when you really think about it, but the way that they lost, 34-24, that game really got away from Alabama in that one. But outside of that, I mean, if you really look at that, this Alabama team, they had some struggles early on the season. That South Florida game, we were talking about it heavily on this show. The Texas A&M game, they struggled in that one. Arkansas, the list goes on and on. So, this is not, one of these teams that's really been dominant like the Alabama teams that we have seen. And so, if you're really asking me if the playoff committee got it right, if you're looking for the best four teams, yes. If you're looking for the most four deserving teams, then no, because why even play the games? Like that's really where I stand on this selection of putting Alabama in and leaving Florida State. I don't give a damn if Jordan Travis was injured or not. This is a team sport. One guy doesn't make a team. There's no I in team. We've heard that statement shoved it. If you play sports, you've heard that statement like forever. So I just really discredit that. I definitely agree with Mike Norvell had to say. I mean, this selection, I mean, it's not ruining college football, but like, why even play the games? You're pretty much just saying like you can go 13-0, you can handle your business. The hour. Just think about like the hours that Florida State put in every single week, and this is not like a team that just went through this soft schedule. They played LSU week one, and they handled them pretty handily. I mean, LSU, you look at the playoff rankings, they're number 13. Believe that's still a good win. And then they went on the road to Florida. I know that Florida, they're a 5-7 team, but I think that their record doesn't really show how good of a football team that they were this season. But I don't know. I don't know. I just don't really agree how this playoff committee, I just don't know like why we have this playoff committee in the first place. Like, why are we relying on 12 Joe Bros who haven't even watched a down of football, and they're trying to shove it down our throats like, oh, the defensive piece. Oh, your offense looks good one week. Oh, your offense looks bad. Let me drop it down 5 spots. So I don't know. Like, yes, is this going to be a good playoff? Sure. I think that's probably one of the reasons why there's been like a lot of blowouts. In the national championship game last year, 65-7. I'm sure that's still in their heads. So maybe they didn't want another TCU, especially with Florida State, being down to their second string quarterback. And Florida State didn't look good against Louisville. They didn't look good against Florida. But you can't just assume that they're going to get boat raced by one of these teams that's in the playoff.
Right. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they didn't get it right. I feel like, Florida State should have been there. We had this discussion. You brought up my point pretty much right there. And uh, the biggest thing, we're sitting here talking about this, and the biggest thing for me was like, man, I don't think any of us thought a couple of weeks ago that we'd be sitting here talking about a college football playoff without Georgia in the picture. So that's
No.
that's pretty surprising. So, it's a credit to Alabama for winning the game. It was a one heck of a game, though. I mean, it's a really close game like that. Now, if Alabama blew them out, then I get it. Put Alabama in the playoff, we wouldn't be having this discussion. But they won by 3 points, so I it's hard for me to put them in there. Just the SEC beat up on each other this year, and to put Alabama in there just felt like a cop out for a lot of people because of past years. Alabama's always found a way to sneak in, whether they've won 10 games, whether they've gone undefeated. I mean, it doesn't matter. They always find their way in. Um, but yeah, I mean, moving past all this, let's get to our top 25 risers and fallers of the end of like, this is, like, ostensibly the last risers and fallers because, well, let's just say you can't move anymore once we get to bowl season because of opt-outs, all that mess. I think you should be able to move, outside of the top 4 is what I'm saying,
I
like.
mean, the AP puts out a final one, but outside of that, this is it for the CFP top 25.
Right, so I honestly think you should, but never mind, let's get to it. Risers, Tyler, hit us with your riser for the week.
Yeah, riser of the week is going to be SMU. They were a team that was in the discussion of the New Year's Six bowl game. That would have been another thing, Liberty versus SMU. The committee spent a hefty time on that. They give the nod to Liberty. I honestly would have been more mad if Liberty got screwed than Florida State getting
Yeah.
screwed, because you go 13-0. I don't care your schedule. Their schedule was not great, honestly. They're ranked 133rd in FBS. That's probably dead last. They didn't really play anybody. SMU, if you really think about it, they played Oklahoma pretty close, and then they had a close loss to TCU. So that's where the two losses was. But they looked dominant against Tulane. You called it. I mean, SMU, they really outclassed Tulane, if you really think about it. Yeah, Tulane wasn't really in that ball game. SMU really dominated that one. So moving up all the way to number 24. Still a good bowl game. Just on the outside looking in, they would have been the team to face off against Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl, but nonetheless, a very good season for SMU, finishing the season 11-2.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go out to what's left of the Pac-12. I'm gonna go to the Arizona Wildcats. Arizona finished the season 9-3. They finished 14th in the country, right behind LSU, another 9-3 team. Those are your top 2 9-win teams. Well, 3 loss teams that are right there. So, yeah, I mean, I really think LSU's probably the best 3 loss team in the country. Played a tough schedule this year. Played Alabama pretty hard. Um, but yeah, I mean, they played a pretty tough schedule, and the teams above them had really good years in the SEC. You're always going to find LSU in that top 25 unless some dramatic collapse happens. But for Arizona to be where they are, I mean, they really a complete turnaround from previous seasons. It's been a long time since Arizona has been in the picture of anything. For them to be at 14 is very impressive. So happy with the season that they had, and good for them to finish in the top 15 for the CFP final poll.
Yeah, from our follower, this team didn't really fall much, only 2 spots, but I was just not impressed with them. That's Oklahoma State. I mean, I don't know, it was either Texas, playing their A game, and Oklahoma State playing their C game or even D game, but I thought this one was going to be closer. The line was 15, and Texas really handled it. That was not even close. I mean, a big man scored a touchdown, the defensive tackle for Texas. So Oklahoma State's defense couldn't really do much. We'll see if they can get back on track on the bowl game. They played Texas A&M in the Texas Bowl. We got a lot of tax bowls, so I guess get your taxes done this tax season. Yeah, not really impressed with Oklahoma State in this one. It was more of, I thought that this was going to be a much closer game. Oklahoma State was really riding high, coming off of a couple of wins. But Ollie Gordon, he won the Doak Walker Award last night with the best running back. So keep an eye on him next year for the Heisman Trophy. But Oklahoma State, very disappointing in champion.
Yeah, Ollie Gordon definitely a very deserving candidate for that award. Definitely one of the best RBs in college football this year. But for me, for my faller, I'm going to go to the game that you referenced a couple minutes ago, that SMU Tulane game. For me, my faller is Tulane, sitting at 22. They fell out of the top 25. Finished the season 11-2 as well as SMU. But my problem with Tulane was, I mean, they were playing at home. And for you to only score 2 touchdowns, you scored an early touchdown in the first quarter, and you scored an early one, or kind of right around the mid mark of this third quarter. So, I mean, for you to only score 2 touchdowns at home is pretty bad. I mean, I think they scored more than 14 points in every single game this year except for this game. So it's pretty, abysmal offensive performance for them at home. I knew SMU's defense was going to turn it up just a little bit. But I mean, SMU was able to score 2 touchdowns there in the first and second quarter. And after that, it was just all field goals. I mean, that's how they won the game. Just got in field goal range and hit chip shots all game long. So, yeah, for Tulane to lose that game, I get them falling out of the top 25. It was a great run for them last year. And this year, I think they got a lot of hype going into this season with how they played last year and got to the Cotton Bowl, beat USC. So I think that, they've turned over a leaf, and now it's kind of at the point where, their coaches heading out the door, things are happening. So For Tulane, it was still a great season, 11-2 after a great season last year. So good for them. But yeah, they're my fall. They're just falling out of the top 25 there in a bad loss. I thought it was going to be a close game, and it just wasn't. I mean, didn't even hit the over. So I mean, I thought for sure this game was going to hit the over, and it just didn't come even close. But getting to our game of today, the game. I think this should be the game that's called the game. Like this should be the game because these two teams.
America's game.
This is America's game. Like, come on, people. Army is the 3-point favorite
It's now
on this
2.5.
neutral
I just saw it
on this
drop.
2.5. Now it's 2.5, and it was at 2.5, and now 3, and now it's back to 2.5. So 2.5 for Army versus the Navy midshipmen. Thoughts, Tyler? Give me your thoughts because I know that you hate this game. Because not hate this game, but like
I don't hate
you
this
don't.
game. I just,
You
every
just
year it's like 10 to
It's just
7.
boring.
It's a big hit.
For Tyler, this is a boring game. Last year's Army Navy game was probably the most exciting Army Navy game we've had in a very long time, considering went to double overtime and Army ended up winning and kicking. I'm so glad this game is out of Philadelphia. That's the worst place to have this game. So I feel like this one's going to be a lot better. I feel like big turnout for this one. So give me your thoughts.
Well, the only thing that you really need is what is the over under in this game? And the over under is at a merely 27.5. So do it as you please. Always take the under in this game. This is either like a 10 to 7, like 10 to 3, whatever. Unless this game goes into overtime, I have no idea how this over is going to hit. Really look at both of these teams. I think that they're pretty similar. I mean, they have the same record, 5-6, 5-6. A very slow start to the season. Navy got boat race out there in Ireland in week number 0 against Notre Dame, and we were putting Notre Dame on a pedestal for the first couple of weeks, and they kind of fallen off. Army, they had a really rough start to the season. They got that big victory against UTSA. And then after that, it was really brutal for them. LSU put it on them. But after that, both of these teams, I mean, they just put it on. Like, I guess they just figure like, hey, we got this big game coming up in a couple of weeks. We need to be playing for something. They fell short. If you're looking at both of these teams, they're 5-6, 5-6. Even if they get to the 6th win, they can't. They would have had to get their 6th win before this game. So both of these teams are sadly not bowl eligible, but this is their bowl game pretty much right here. This is for bragging rights. This is for whoever can sing the alma mater first. And then whoever sings alma mater second. So this is definitely one of the great traditions in America, watching this game on CBS. For if you're SEC on CBS fans and want to tune into this one more time for these two lovely announcers, definitely go for it. But I'm going to go with Army in this one. I think that this is definitely going to be a defensive, grinded out game. It's going to be run the football up the gut. Not one, not two. I mean, how many carries are both of these teams going to have? It's probably going to be over 30, maybe even 40. And it might be by the halfback. It might be by the fullback. It might be by the running back. It might be by the receiver. It might be by the quarterback. You never know who's going to get the ball with both of these teams. But I'm going to go Army. And you know what? I'm going to give a score prediction. I'll go 13-7. Army wins.
Oh my gosh. Army's going to cover the 2.5 Tyler's got there on the line. For me, this one, Army's won their last 3 games to end the season here. I mean, so a team that was 2-6 at one point is now back in the picture at 5-6. Had they won the game against UMass at home, they lost by a touchdown. How do you give up 21 to UMass and only score 14 and then go the next week and beat the brakes off of Air Force on the road? I don't know how, but had they won that game, they're in a bowl game. Like, that's crazy to me that had they won that game, they're in a bowl game. They had no shot against LSU, 62-0. I mean, that just felt like, for me, that felt like LSU should have put their second string in for that game because it was so bad. It was just like, stop the madness. It's too much, especially against the Service Academy. That's just killing me. But no, for Navy's season kind of all over the place, doesn't score a ton of points, but when they do score some points, they win games. I mean, they beat UAB 31-6. The next week they go to East Carolina and they beat them 10-0. So I don't know. SMU put the kitchen sink on them, and to end the season. So, but SMU's a good football team, and that's a tough team to play to end the season. But I mean, for this game here, both 5-6, 5-6, you can't read the season on this game. You just never know what's going to happen. Now, I'll tell you what, if it was snowing sideways, I know who I'm picking. And with this one here, cool temperatures. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with the sea creatures. I'm going with the Navy. I feel every year it's like this game comes down to one possession and it's a turnover. There's always a turnover late in this game. It does not matter what is going on. There's always a turnover. I feel like Navy can make the most of it in Army's territory, win this game. They won't cover. There's no chance it's going to be more than 2.5 points either way. I think this is a 1-point affair. This is a 1-point game. I'm going to go with the cover. They're going to cover the over. It's going to be over in this game. It's going to be very, very close. I'm going to go with the wacky one. I'm going to go 15-14 in this one.
It does sound like an Army-Navy game.
Wacky game, some 15-14 magic. Wild things are going to happen in this one. So I'm ready for this one. It's my favorite one of the year.
I will say Navy definitely does have the advantage in the uniforms over Army. Navy always brings it.
Oh my gosh. Navy brings the heat. Last year was really good. I mean, last year those were some of the best. Just Army's got to step up the game. I just feel like
if you really think about it, like this series has been dominated by Navy, for
years.
They had that 15-year winning streak, and Army finally won one, and it's been back and forth. Army I just got to say, thank you for Army for finally winning the game and making it in the series, because I feel like every year we were previewing the show, it was just oh, why are we picking this game? Navy's going to win. Navy's going to win the 1 year that Army wins. Now it's back to being an even series. So yeah, I definitely love the uniforms. Both of these academies definitely bring in, but I think that Navy the past couple of years, especially those helmets,
unbelievable. So yeah, moving on from this game, as much as I don't want to, we're gonna move on to the next big thing before the end of the season here. And that is who is winning the Heisman Trophy. Your 4 final candidates on the docket are LSU's Jaden Daniels, quarterback, wide receiver from Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr., quarterback Oregon, Bo Nix, and the quarterback for Washington, Michael Penix Jr. 2 Pac-12 quarterbacks, a Big Ten wide receiver, and an SEC quarterback in this one. So almost all parties represented in this one. Who's winning the Heisman? A hint from Sports Scrambled here, last week, 2 weeks ago? I kind of hinted that I felt like before the Pac-12 championship, if Bo Nix had a good Pac-12 championship and they win the Pac-12 championship, I thought Bo Nix really had a chance with it. As we saw, game really struggled for Oregon, struggle for Bo Nix to move the football down the field, didn't look good in the pocket, just uncomfortable. On the other side of the field, though, Michael Penix Jr. had himself a game, and his best 2 games of the year felt like they were against Oregon. When the lights got brighter, and Michael Penix just stepped it up, and it was just that next leap for Michael Penix for each game that was just that much bigger. For them to finish where they did and for them to be second in the country competing for a national championship. Definitely a lot of credit to Michael Penix's performances on the offensive side of the football. For me, to the SEC, because I don't feel like Marvin Harrison really has – I don't think Marvin Harrison should be there. That's my thing. I just feel like it's a name pick for me, I feel like, more than performance at the end of the day. And that's not how it should be. I thought that the more deserving candidate in that role was Jalen Milroe. I thought definitely
Travis. Honestly, I would have put him there.
Right, Jordan Travis, who was the 5th ranked on the Heisman list there, and just came up just a little bit short. Had he played the rest of the season, he's definitely sitting in that spot rather than Marvin Harrison Jr. Um, so I feel like Jordan Travis really could have gotten an opportunity and a chance to be there. Definitely a fantastic season for him for a large majority of the season. And last year was actually a really good season for him. I said something last year, I think, on the show, and I said that Jordan Travis could be a Heisman Trophy candidate. Um, and definitely had all the means for that to happen. Just injuries happen, things happen. And he, has decided to part ways with college football. So definitely a future for him in the NFL is very possible. But for me, I feel like Jaden Daniels is the pick. I think that we'll see for the Heisman Trophy. I think that definitely he is the best quarterback in the country right now. I do know that Michael Penix won the Maxwell Award, so I do get that. But that kind of hints at the Heisman a little bit. So for me, I think Jaden Daniels is the Heisman Trophy winner. I think that that's going to be the second LSU quarterback in what 4 years
Who would have
to
thought that?
you know second person from LSU in 4 years. So they have a good quarterback running going. Last year at this time, I would have told you there's no chance in hell that Jalen Daniels was going to win the Heisman Trophy. I didn't think it was going to happen. But a good season for him, kept LSU in a lot of ball games. So I think he unanimously could get a vote.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to predict the order here. I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. will be fourth. I agree with you. I don't know why he's there. I mean, if you really look at the stats between him and Malik Neighbors, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr., you got the Blendnikoff Award. Congratulations. I mean, I think that he's going to have a great NFL career now. The couple reports that, ESPN's been reporting that he hasn't really made up his decision. He's probably the NIL and all that, but go to the NFL. I don't care if you're on the Bears or the Cardinals, wherever you are, just go to the NFL. But I think that number 3, Bo Nix, I think I agree with you. If he would have had a very good game against Washington, but he didn't. Both quarterbacks threw an interception in that game. I think it's pretty much down to a 2-horse race. Michael Penix, Jaden Daniels. Really, the only difference is, to me, is that Michael Penix, he's undefeated. He's playing in the college football playoff. Jaden Daniels isn't. LSU's a 3-loss team, but we have seen a quarterback win with a 3-loss team. RG3, Tebow, Manziel was a 2-loss team at the time. But I think that is Jaden Daniels. I mean, if you take Daniels off of LSU is probably like a 4-win team at max, especially with that defense has been playing. If you would have told me that LSU could possibly win a Heisman Trophy award and be a quarterback in 2 out of the 4 years, I would have called you crazy, because growing up, LSU was, if you're a quarterback, that's a place to die, because you just run the football up the gut with Les Miles the way that he wanted to run his offense. So I think that if you really look at it, Jaden Daniels, he's definitely been the best player in college football. I could definitely agree with Michael Penix. I think it's going to be closer than really what the odds are saying. I mean, Daniels, if you look at, all the major betting platforms, he's pretty much a lock to win this award. But I think that when it comes down to it, I think that the awards will not really be split, but I think that's going to be closer than some people are saying, and pretty much this being a runaway. I think that Penix, I had him as my preseason Heisman Trophy pick, so it wouldn't surprise me if he finishes number 2. But if you really look at the overall season, I think that Jaden Daniels, both in the rushing department, he has over 1,000 yards rushing, and he also has some passing, 50 overall touchdowns. So it's hard to bypass that even with the 3 losses. So I think that JD5 takes home the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, both picks right there. I feel like that's probably going to be what most people are thinking when it comes to the Heisman Trophy and voting for that. I think definitely we'll see Jaden Daniels hoisting that trophy in New York here soon. But going on to our next thing is the most surprising and the most disappointing teams from the season. Because I feel like this is we're at the mark here where we can make this decision because people opt out for bowl games, and bowl games don't matter at the end of the day, apparently. Even though I think they should, I feel like bowl games should matter, and they've gotten the notion that they don't matter for a lot of guys that are going to the NFL, and I feel like they should. And getting to it, we're going to go with the most surprising team of the season in the year, most surprising team of the year. I'm going to go first in this one because I got to do this. Um, and yes, I'm picking an SEC team. Tyler already knows who I'm picking. But I feel like this team here embodies what it means to turn a season around. Their head coach definitely a deserving candidate for coach of the year. I mean, just like this guy turned their team around completely in the SEC, made their mark there as the runner up in the East. So I'm gonna go with the Missouri Tigers. The Missouri
I
Tigers
love that
finished the
pick.
season 10-2, a fantastic year. Only losses come to LSU and a really tough loss there and a close one, a lot closer than what the score says. And they have a loss to Georgia on the road in a 9-point loss there. Kept it pretty close with them throughout the end of the game. But, Missouri really turned it on at that point there where they got to the Vanderbilt game, pretty early in the season. They win that game by, you know, pretty convincingly, and they get to LSU, struggle a little bit with LSU, drop out of the top 25 again when they were sitting at 23. Hit Kentucky hard. They're back in again at 20. So, I mean, they jumped up quite a bit there. And for me, the biggest game of the year for them is that Tennessee game and just absolutely running the football with Schrader and just absolutely running them over. Definitely could have been in a list of those running back candidates to win the most deserving for running back of the year. But I mean, 36-7 against Tennessee. Tennessee was ranked 13. Missouri was ranked 14. They beat them. Missouri's in the top 10. They beat Florida at home, beat Arkansas on the road, and all of a sudden we're talking about a Missouri team that's got a New Year's Six bowl. I mean, a fantastic season for them. Great to see them back in contention for the first time in over 10 years. So great to have them back there competing well in saying that we belong in the SEC, and definitely a team that does belong in the SEC for years to come.
Yeah, I really like that pick. I mean, Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz, he definitely should be the SEC Coach of the Year, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll see if Missouri can take down Ohio State if you get to 11-2. I mean, Missouri, if you really look at the, the new SEC of Oklahoma and Texas, I think that Missouri could definitely be a surprise even next year. But this team was not even on my radar. This one, this conference was loaded. I was talking so heavily about Washington and USC, Oregon. But here comes mighty Arizona with 9-3. I swear, this man is an absolute dog. This guy right here might be my dog of the year. Noah, I'm probably gonna screw up his name, 5 feet. This man is only a freshman. I mean, Arizona is like Jeff Fish. If there's like any awards for Coach of the Year, he won't win it. It's probably gonna be like Nick Saban or somebody like that. But Jeff Fish is definitely one of the best up and coming college football head coaches. And if you were looking at Arizona, they're moving to the Big 12. Sign me up. I might honestly pick them to win the Big 12 next year. With Oklahoma and Texas moving out, Oklahoma State, they'll probably be one of the top dogs. Kansas State, they're losing their quarterback. So I might just have to pick Arizona to win the Pac-12. But if you really run down their schedule, they lost an early one to Mississippi State. If you look at Mississippi State, the way that their team ended, that was definitely one of the questionable losses, if they really go with that. But if you really look at outside of their other losses, they got a 7-point loss to Washington at home and then a 2-point loss to overtime. So their losses weren't like all combined, like very, very close. So this could have realistically been a team, maybe they've been 11-1. And maybe be 10-2, but they're really right outside of the Pac-12 championship. I would have loved to see them in the Pac-12 championship, get another crack at Washington, but they didn't. But if you really look at all the other scores, they absolutely dominated. Like Washington State, they beat them 44-6. Oregon State, they won by 3. UCLA, they dominated them. I was like, they pretty much like Utah, 42-18. Like, who would have thought that coming into the season? Like, Oklahoma, get ready because you got a buzzsaw coming for you in the Alamo Bowl. This is like my lock of the bowl season. I'm picking Arizona, and I'm picking Arizona to cover. No way that Oklahoma is beating this team, especially when they play defense. So give me Arizona as my most surprising team of the year. Honestly, like this was the team that I love this year. So Arizona, love watching them. They're going to be one of my favorites to win the Big 12 next year.
But think about it. Had they closed that game out against USC, or they win that 3-point game, or they win that game
Two
against
overtime losses.
Washington, if they win that game against Washington, they're playing in the Pac-12 championship.
Hey, they might even be in the playoff.
They could have been in the playoff, dude. And they lost to Mississippi State, too. I mean, that's what's crazy about all that, is they lost to a Mississippi State team who had an abysmal season for the most part, and just unbelievable for them to be where they are. And yes, they are a pick for the bowl season that I don't think anybody is going to argue that they're much better than what their rank says about them at 14. And that's, I mean, 14 is nothing to sneeze at, but they're a lot better than what 14 says for them in the top 25 there. Two of the most opposite side of the spectrum of all time, and to the most disappointing teams of the year. Tyler, I want to hear your most disappointing team this season in college football.
Well, I actually give you two here because two of these teams I had a lot of high expectations coming into the season. I had one team in the playoff and I had another team make it into the New Year's Six. I'm sorry, I got to do it to you, Air Force. Air Force is my most disappointing team of the year. I mean, this was a team that went 8-0. And you finish off the season 8-4. Like, come on. Like, this was a team that I was so high about. Like, I remember it on that one show that we were talking about. Like, why is Air Force not ranked? They get ranked, and then all of a sudden, Army beats them by 20. And then after that, they lose to Hawaii on the islands, not even close. And then they lose to UNLV. That's a respectable loss. Boise State, that's a respectable loss. They never lose. And then you look at the bowl games, and then you got James Madison. Like, oh my, yeah. I don't think that they're winning this one. Even if James Madison's head coach isn't there, even if their quarterback's not there, like the way that Air Force has been playing the past couple of 4 weeks, this is like a different football team. If you look at the first 8 weeks, honestly, like I'm not saying they could have beat anybody in the country, but this was a team that, played a brand of defense that they want. They ran the football with ease and nobody could stop them. They run an Army. I guess if you're in the Army, all hell breaks loose. But yeah, this was a team that I had as my New Year's representative. So they're in the Armed Forces Bowl against James Madison. That's definitely going to be a fun bowl game to watch. Definitely agree with James Madison being able to play in a bowl game. I've really been vying for that for the past couple of weeks. So Air Force is one of my most disappointing teams, and Penn State's my other one. I mean, I picked them in the playoff as my number 2 seed. And to go 10-2 every year, I mean, if you want a virtual lock of what Penn State, if their record is going to be every year, it's going to be 10-2 because James Franklin hasn't beaten either Michigan or Ohio State since he's been the head coach there. I mean, once in a blue moon they do it. Like a couple of years, they needed a blocked field goal touchdown to beat Ohio State, and then they beat Michigan pretty handily whenever Saquon Barkley, Trace McSorley, all those guys were there. But really, the expectations, I know that they're 10-2. Everybody would probably take that if you're outside of that. But I picked them in the playoff as my number 2 seed to win the Big Ten championship, and they failed me. So Penn State and Air Force, my most disappointing team, just based on my high expectations that I had. I'm just, as a teacher, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, that one hurts. Moving on from that tough one.
Can you move on?
Yeah, I've got one worse than that for you. I got the worst of the worst team this year. Let's talk about all the friggin' hype that we got in the offseason. And it's just constant every single friggin' day. I got to the point where I had to turn the TV off. We talked about it so much. I even bought into the hype early in the season. And I was like, well, maybe they're going to do it. They start the season 3-0. And I said, are they going to be good? And they just, they finished. They started at the top of the conference. They ended at the bottom of the conference.
Oh.
A team that lost the last 6 of their last 7 games of the season? 6 of the last 7? Are you kidding me? And their only win that they got in that stretch was against Arizona State, and you won by a pity 3 points. Colorado.
Oh, come on. They went 1-11 last year.
Terrible. Well, no, because everybody bought into the hype where they were going to turn it around, and here they come, and they beat TCU, and they put up 45. They beat Colorado, they beat Nebraska, they beat Colorado State, and here we go. They're ranked in the top 25. They're ranked 18th in the country at that point. Well, they run into Oregon. They get absolutely ran over. They go to freaking at home to USC. We think they're going to win against USC, and they lose late in the game. They beat Arizona State, and we get to the point where, like, okay, they're going to be a mediocre team in the Pac-12. Oh, no. We don't stop there. They lose to Stanford somehow in a terrible game at home where they were up by, 23? And they blew it? And from down after that, just downfall.
I think the wheels fell off.
Travis Hunter.
Colorado State game told me everything I needed to see.
You lost Travis Hunter. You lose to UCLA. You lose to Oregon State. You lose to Arizona. You lose to Washington State, who just finished barely above you. And you lost to Utah to end the season. That is got to be the worst, like the best start and the worst end to a season I've seen in college football in a long time. I mean, terrible. Absolutely awful. I get it. Arizona's ranked in the top 25. They're a decent team. Oregon State's ranked in the top 25. At one point, UCLA was ranked in the top 25. Oregon, a top 10 team. USC was ranked in the top 25. Well, they turned out to be atrocious. And they could have been my other pick because I was so tired of people talking about Caleb Williams, and all they want to do is talk about Caleb Williams. And it was terrible. It was awful. It was the worst thing on planet Earth to watch outside of Washington and Oregon. They made the entire Pac-12 season, and Arizona. Those are your 3 teams that made the entire season for you. Now, had Washington State beat Washington late in the season, and they almost did, then we're talking. Like, then it's a little better. But, oh my God, even Utah. To end the season the way that Utah ended their season and finished 8-4 after the last 2 seasons that team has had and won the Pac-12 championship, and you lost their final games the way you lost them, I table everything at this point. I'm glad that we saw the Pac-12 for so many years, but I'm finally glad that something's going to change a little bit because there are teams there like Colorado that go play in the group of 5 for Pete's sake. I mean, it's so atrocious to see them play football late in the season. I couldn't watch it down to their games. I couldn't do it. I literally skipped over it. I said, nope, can't do it. Because it was like watching the Kansas City Chiefs and watching Taylor Swift up there in the booth. How many times are they going to show her? How many times am I going to get drunk on my couch after I have to take a shot every time they show Taylor Swift up in the stands? Because it was just about like that with Deion Sanders. I mean, every single second of the game that they didn't say hut, and they were showing him on the sideline. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, nobody cares at the end of the day. And they do their little thing on YouTube and all that with Shadur and Shiloh and all that. Just watch it. Get rid of it.
You think Shadur comes back?
Yes, I think so. But yeah, I mean, talk about a highest of high. I mean, their school was raving about them. And then they got to the end of the season. It was just like same old Colorado. It just turned into same old Colorado. Completely different team. Player-wise, but the same result, it felt like. Had they not won those early games in the season with the hype and everything, had they not beat TCU, had they lost that game, this is another 11-1 team. Or 1-11 team, I'm sorry. This is another 1-11 team in the Pac-12. It is. So, I don't know where Colorado stands. I'm going to be so glad we're going to be done talking about Colorado. Please, God, stop talking about Colorado in the offseason on all these major networks because we will not be talking about it on here. That is the last time you will hear the words Colorado out of my mouth on this show for a long time.
Not even in the Big 12?
Not even in the Big 12. They have no chance in the Big 12. I mean, maybe in a mascot battle, but that's about it. Like, Ralphie might win in a mascot battle. I give it to him. They come out with a live buffalo. And I tell you what, that thing runs 100 miles an hour, and it is so cool to watch. But my God, I cannot watch their football team play another down of football for another season. I can't do it. Okay, I'm done. Moving on to the next topic, and I've completely blanked at this point. I'm so off the rails. The next thing here, we get to the end of the season, and we have now had over 1,500 players enter the transfer portal since Monday evening. Since last Monday evening, we have had 1,500 students. Okay, we'll call them students because they're going to college. Enter the transfer portal. So, petition. You can only transfer every 2 years. That means if you are a 2-year grad student, you can only transfer 3 times, right? If you are a 4-year student and you're getting
Like
your
Exhibit
undergraduate
A.
degree, you can only transfer 1 time. That means 1 time. That means you transfer after your sophomore year, you get your junior and senior season, and you are done. Like, I'm so sick and tired of seeing these people transfer out of schools every single year like it's a revolving door. Like, that's terrible. It doesn't give other guys the opportunity, especially at a high school. Think about all these kids in high school that are trying to play in college. Oh, no, we can't have him because good old, whoever is coming from Notre Dame to come and play for us now because, we need a quarterback and they're going to transfer to us like it's free agency. Like, okay, no, this is college football. Like, there's a reason that we didn't have this a number of years ago, and I think it needs to go back to that because it's gotten way out of hand, in my opinion. But aside from that, Dillon Gabriel has announced his transfer destination. Tyler, I'll let you take it away.
Yep, going to Oregon. I like you just mentioned. I mean, this was a guy that started at UCF, transferred to Oklahoma, and now transferring to Oregon. I thought the consensus was that he was going to Mississippi State and following his offense coordinator. I'm sure that Mississippi State fans are not happy with this, but I think it makes perfect sense. You're going to another high-powered offense. Oregon's going to the Big Ten. That's definitely going to be a challenge for them. I haven't really looked at Oregon's schedule. I'm sure that we'll get to that into the offseason, start looking at, these power teams and how their schedules are going to be lined up for 2024. But, Oregon, real look at Bo Nix. The way the transition was, Bo Nix, he had his good games at Auburn, but was an inconsistent quarterback. And then Oregon really transformed him into being a really good quarterback. So I think that Dillon Gabriel, he had a very good season with Oklahoma. Oklahoma really had one of the best offenses in the Big 12. Really, what's been hurting them has been their defense this year. They were 10-2. They won against Texas. I mean, they've done everything. And then they lose to Kansas. I don't know who else they lost to. They had that 2-game losing stretch. Oh, yeah, it was against Oklahoma State. So, yeah, this was a team that I had them, finishing 10-2, but not making the Big 12 championship. I think that was a fall. Like losing to Kansas definitely stands out to you. I get losing to Oklahoma State's a rivalry game. But Dillon Gabriel going to Oregon, I think that's a perfect fit. Oregon definitely has a lot of pieces around him. Their defense, I think that's going to be – this is definitely going to be a challenge. Going from the Pac-12, going for the Big Ten. I mean, you got to bring your defense every week because it's going to be a grinded-out football game. Oregon's still going to want to throw the football like they do. So I think that Oregon's definitely getting one of the top transfer prospects in Dillon Gabriel. I think that this is his last season. It's got to be because this man's been in college football for like 5 or 6 years now.
Right. Yeah, I mean, their biggest games of next year are going to be at home against Ohio State, on the road at Michigan, and back at home against Washington. I mean, those are going to be your 3 games. They're going to be your
toughest. We play
toughest
Washington again? Oh, my gosh.
Yes. To close the season out in November, they're going to be playing Washington. So, yeah, tough games there. You got Wisconsin on the road also in between there.
Wisconsin's going to be better next year.
Wisconsin's going to be a lot better football team next year. Texas Tech's always a tough game to play. Illinois looks really good too still. I mean, they still look like a decent team.
Especially if it's sandwiched between both of those like big games. Like, oh, we got to play Illinois. That would be easy.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a stretch where you play early October game against Ohio State, then you got to play Purdue on the road, back home against Illinois, and then go back to Michigan to play in Ann Arbor against Michigan is going to be a tough stretch for them. Maryland back at home, Wisconsin on the road, and back at home against Washington. So a tough season, and it's going to be a tough stretch for the Big Ten. I think you're going to see the Big Ten teams beat up on each other. You're going to see SEC teams beat up on each other. And I feel like next year we'll see multiple teams.
We'll get a 3-loss team in the 12-team.
We'll have a 12-team playoff. We're going to have teams that I think are going to be 4-loss teams going to be making it in the top 12 teams, which I think is crazy. 7 and 4 teams making it to that hump, making the hump there, and getting to the point where they're going to be 7 and 5 potentially, I don't know about that. Probably 8 and 4 is probably where we're going to sit at, for the large majority of some of those teams. But it's going to be incredible to see what happens there. Of course, we'll talk about all in the off season. Moving on to our next thing here is our next segment of the transfer portal. It's where's that quarterback going? It's literally where's Waldo for quarterbacks in this lovely, let's just call it the off season at this point for the quarterbacks that are entering the transfer portal, that have already entered the transfer portal. There's so much more to come. We're going to be talking about the transfer portal for the next 3.5 months. So let's get ready, folks. Buckle up. The roller coaster is about to take off because we have some big quarterbacks in this list. I'm happy to say that some of them are going to find new homes because they need to find new homes. Some of them are leaving, and I just think it's kind of stupid, and they're just going on a little hiatus. But let's get to them, Tyler.
First one is Will Rogers from Mississippi State. Will he come back to Starkville with Jeff Lebby, or will he go somewhere else? Jacob, where is he going?
So let's talk about Will Rogers real quick.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah, we can do a little bio, and then we'll get
Will Rogers, with the state of how Mississippi State's football team has been the last few years with Will Rogers at quarterback, has been nothing short of a roller coaster ride itself. I don't know if Mississippi State, how they finish this year, what to make of it. Will Rogers, okay, over 1,500 passing yards this year, not amazing, not great, kind of middle of the road there, lower half when it comes to quarterbacks. I think completion percentage was 50s, kind of all over the place for Will Rogers. I think it's probably wise that he finds a new home. I felt like Mississippi State was a weird move for him anyways with that. So for him to find a new home, I would say Will Rogers has got to go somewhere in the Big 12, possibly. I feel like he's either a Big 12 or a Big 10 quarterback at the most. I could see him in the ACC, but I feel like Will Rogers could be a fit for a team coming to the Big 12. Could he go to a school like, Stanford potentially? I don't know. There's schools out there that could be on the West Coast that are looking for a quarterback like Will Rogers, something that he can throw the ball. Because when he throws the ball, he's a decent quarterback if he throws it correctly. If not, he can find himself at a place like Iowa. I mean, that's realistically two opposite sides of the spectrum, but that's realistically where he could find himself. I think he's the biggest curveball when it comes to finding out a spot for Will Rogers.
Yeah, I think that if you really look at Will Rogers, if you look at Mike Leach's system whenever he was in it, he was an air raid quarterback. He's been an air raid quarterback for really most of his life. I mean, in high school, his high school team was an air raid attack, and then Mississippi State, they ran it for a couple of years, and then obviously with the circumstances, they went away from it, and this year he really struggled, and the team struggled with them. So I think that he goes to the Pac-12, and I'm going to go with Washington. I think that there is a tie. If the running back for Washington, Dylan Johnson, he was originally at Mississippi State. So I think there's little ties there. When Michael Penix going to the NFL, there's a spot open for them. So I think it just makes too much sense for me. So I think that Will Rogers does what Bo Nix does. He went to the SEC, I guess not to the Pac-12. Now he's going to the Big Ten. So Will Rogers to the Big Ten. I think that the Washington Huskies land Rogers.
Yeah, very good possibility for him to go there, especially with Dylan Gabriel going to Oregon. Very possible for him to do such thing. Moving on to our next quarterback in the transfer portal is Kyle McCord, the now former Ohio State quarterback, has announced he's going into the transfer portal. Probably the biggest shocker for everybody that Kyle McCord has left Ohio State. As far as Kyle McCord goes, I just don't know. I really don't know where he goes. That's the problem. He's a decent quarterback. He's probably SEC bound. That's probably my guess. Kyle McCord's going to be an SEC quarterback. Where he goes, that's a very good question. Does he go to a place like Auburn? Does he potentially try his hand at LSU? I mean, there's multiple places that he could go.
No.
Tyler says no to LSU. He doesn't want him at LSU. That's what I hear. You don't want another Ohio State transfer to come to Baton Rouge.
This is no Joe Burrow, let me tell you that.
Yeah, Kyle McCord, I just don't know. I really don't. Potentially Florida. I mean, there's a few options out there, but I think he's going to the SEC.
I think the SEC makes sense here. I'll say Kentucky. I think that he lands at Kentucky. You know, we saw Devin Leary go there. That didn't really work out. Leary did not have the great season that I thought that he would. But Kentucky, you know, Devin Leary, I think that he's done. I think that he's out of eligibility. So a quarterback is open. Who knows? Like, none of these people anymore, like, want to trust their freshmen anymore. Like, the transfer portal is the place to go to find your next starting quarterback. That way you can stay afloat, because you don't want to just run out your freshman quarterback out there, especially with all the new conferences that are going to be happening. So I think that Kyle McCord heads on down to the Bluegrass State. So give me Kentucky to land McCord.
Yeah. So we both have him as an SEC quarterback, just a matter of where he goes. I could see him going to a smaller SEC school. I said maybe Missouri at that point. You know, maybe they're looking for another quarterback there to vault them to the next level. But yeah, a lot of potential for Kyle McCord in the future to be an SEC quarterback. On to our next quarterback on the list is Riley Leonard, the former Duke quarterback. Late injury in the season got him hurt. Got into the rehab scene there, and, you know, he's still a really good quarterback. We talked about him quite a bit early in the season, about his success from last season and Duke's success from last season. Of course, Duke, Mike Elko's moved on. He's back at Texas A&M as their head coach, and now they've got a guy coming from Penn State to be the next head coach for Duke, in Manny Diaz, probably the number one most deserving guy that was a coordinator to be the next head coach for a football team. I felt like Manny Diaz was a guy for that. I think he could be the right guy for that job at Duke. He's a system guy, and he's a guy that brings a lot of energy like Mike Elko. So definitely a good fit for Duke. For Riley Leonard, he's moving on. Riley Leonard, I think the obvious selection here is Notre Dame. I think a lot of people have said that, where he's going, because Sam Hartman, finally, for the grace of God, he's not eligible anymore to play football at the college level. Heck, the guy looks like he's 30 and playing college football, and it's like old men versus young little boys playing college football. But no, Riley Leonard, I think, could be going to Notre Dame, so I'll go with Notre Dame in this one. He'd be a very good fit. I think Riley Leonard would be a better fit for Notre Dame than Sam Hartman was for Notre Dame. Just my opinion.
I see Riley Leonard going home. I think that he goes to Auburn. He's from Fairhope, Alabama. It just makes too much sense. If you look at Auburn's quarterback situation, it is not very good. Peyton Thorne, I don't think is a quarterback for them, and they have the sophomore quarterback and Robbie Ashford. They need a veteran guy. They need a guy who can be a dual threat quarterback. You know, Peyton Thorne can be that, but he cannot throw the football worth a dang. I mean, he was able to do it at Michigan State, and then all of a sudden he goes to Auburn, and he just sucks. I'm sorry. Like, he was not very good this season. So I think that with Riley Leonard giving the experience, and he wants a little revenge on Mike Elko leaving him. So he's going to go to Auburn and beat Texas A&M to a pulp next season. So give me Riley Leonard going and playing for the hometown state. No, he's not going to Alabama. Alabama doesn't need him because Jalen Milroe would be their guy for the next couple of years. So Auburn just makes too much sense.
Yeah, moving on to our next quarterback on the list is Cam Ward. This guy here is probably the most underrated quarterback on the list. This guy here could have sat, and he's a top 10 in the Heisman Trophy, selection as far as players go. I feel like Cam Ward, not many people got to see him this year. I feel like that's going to change next year. And he's going one of two places. He's going to the state of Florida, but it's a matter of two places. He's either going to Miami to be the next quarterback for the Hurricanes, or he's going to Florida State to be the next quarterback for the Seminoles. I think he's going to Florida State. I think he is a very good fit. He reminds me of Jordan Travis a little bit. I think that he would be an excellent quarterback and look good in that old Seminole uniform. So I think that Cam Ward, his destination would be Florida State. A good fit there in that system for him. Can get out and scramble a little bit. Very good thrower of the football. He's accurate and could be a very good future NFL quarterback if he does stick with it. I mean, we're a long way from that, but definitely really good. Over 6,400 passing yards, 43 touchdowns. I mean, holy crap. This guy's racking up the stats over this last little bit in his 2 seasons with Washington State. So I honestly think that 2 seasons with over 3,000 passing yards gets you into that next level of quarterback in college football. So dude could be a dog down there at Florida State.
Yeah, whoever gets Cam Ward, their team's going to be like +5. You get an automatic boost. Whoever lands Cam Ward, I agree with you. Florida State definitely makes a lot of sense here. No more Jordan Travis. If you plug like the guys that you have, Rodemaker, I don't know about him. I think that Cam Ward, you plug him in, Florida State's going to win the ACC again. I mean, if you really look at the way that Clemson's been run, even if Tyler Van Dyke's leave Miami, I don't think that Miami is going to be very good. We'll see if they're if they can get somebody else from the transfer portal, because there's a lot of them as we've seen. And so I think if Florida State's definitely one of the top picks for me. So I'll give the Seminoles landing Cam Ward.
Yeah, on to our next quarterback on the list here is Dante Moore, the UCLA quarterback that kind of shocked the college football scene late in the season with his success at UCLA under Chip Kelly. I like this kid, and he's a different style of quarterback. I think who could I compare him to? He reminds me of a Deshaun Watson, kind of. It's kind of weird, but he reminds me of Deshaun just a little bit in play style. But I like Dante Moore. I think he's going to the Big Ten. So is UCLA, but I think he's staying within the Big Ten. Honestly, dude, he's either going to one of two places, and this is a big job. It's a huge job for Dante Moore. I know that it's going to be either, I feel, Ohio State or Michigan. One of the two schools is going to land Dante Moore. Is he the starter potentially at Michigan? Could be. We don't know what the future holds for J.J. McCarthy there at Michigan. So it could be a sense where we could see J.J. McCarthy out the door at Michigan if Jim Harbaugh decides to move on to the NFL. We could. And I feel like he could be the next quarterback for Michigan. So I'm going to stick with Michigan because I feel that Jim Harbaugh's out the door at the end of the season. Michigan, he's going to move on to the NFL. And J.J. McCarthy, I feel like, is probably going to either declare for the NFL draft or he's going to be playing somewhere else. I mean, that's one of the two things that could happen there. So I'm going to go with Michigan for Dante Moore.
Yeah, I think that this is another big one. He was a 5-star recruit. Everybody wanted him. I think that he had, an up and down season. It was a freshman season as expected, but I think that as he grows and as he develops as a quarterback, I think that he's going to be a really good. I think that everybody who needs a quarterback, if you have a quarterback need, then you're calling up Dante Moore's phone. But I think that this is where the new head coach of the Spartans, Jonathan Smith, lands a big splash. I think that Dante Moore heads to East Lansing. They need a guy, they need a face that can really turn this program around. I think that Dante Moore is a really good fit for Michigan State. This has been a program that's been dealing with a lot of off-the-field issues. So I think that if you get a quarterback like Dante Moore, it could quickly turn, especially with Jonathan Smith. He's a fantastic head coach. He was able to develop, DJU, and then also had a really good running back too. So we'll see if anybody from Oregon State follows him. But I think that Dante Moore going to East Lansing, Jonathan Smith, makes a huge splash in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a big one there. Moving on to our next quarterback on the list here is Will Howard, the K-State quarterback, who was basically thrown into the role at Kansas State. Kind of a strange move, we thought, to Kansas State. It was kind of an odd move for Will Howard to begin with, I thought. But here's where I think Will Howard, this is where he makes his money. A lot of people are saying this, and I kind of agree. I feel like he's probably the next quarterback for this team. This quarterback that currently is on this team is going to the NFL and, supposed to be the number 1 overall pick. So I'm going to go with Will Howard to USC. I think it's going to be a very different offense there, but I think he can develop under Lincoln Riley into much more than what he has been for K-State. So I'm going to go with Will Howard to USC.
Yeah, I like this one. I'm going to go with the rival of USC. I'm going to go Notre Dame lands Will Howard. I just think that, like you mentioned, no more Sam Hartman anymore. I think that they were really hoping that Sam Hartman was going to be the guy to lead them back to the playoff. They had a great start to the season. They didn't lose to Duke because they almost lost it. They lost to Louisville, and then outside of that, they lost to Ohio State pretty close. So 9-3 season, still a good season for the second-year head coach. So I think that Will Howard, Notre Dame. I just think that you get the experience there. He was really good at Kansas. You plug him in there. Don't really know him from Sam Hartman to Will Howard. So I think Notre Dame lands Will Howard.
Yeah, potential right there for that. On to our next quarterback. Here is KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas quarterback, the vet here in the SEC. Tyler, where do you see him going?
I honestly have no idea. I just see him as a Big 12 quarterback. I don't know why. You know what? Dylan Gabriel's out, Oklahoma. I'm going to say that KJ Jefferson goes to Oklahoma.
He stays in the red and blue, or the red and white, I'm sorry.
Well, I guess he goes to the SEC, stays in the SEC, so whatever. I just think that I don't know. This is like the one guy I have no idea where he can land. Like at Arkansas, the first 3 years is he was still good this year. I just think that Arkansas just didn't have an offensive line. If you really watch Arkansas, their offensive line could not protect KJ Jefferson. He had hardly any time in this one. Arkansas had that freshman tight end that was his go-to target, and then Rocket Sanders, star running back for Arkansas, he was out for the season. So it was just not he just didn't have everybody around him. So I think that going to Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel's out the door. Brent Venables needs a starting quarterback. You got to get somebody with experience. KJ Jefferson has that. So I think that he stays in the SEC and says boom sooner.
Yeah, I'm going to have KJ staying in the SEC as well, but I'm going to go to the East Coast. I've got him to South Carolina for the Gamecocks. I think that's a good fit for KJ to South Carolina with Spencer Rattler out the door. Finally, good God. I mean, it's about time, but I feel like Spencer Rattler he would have made best if he had gone to the NFL last year. With the way they ended last season, I felt like that really would have boosted his success in the NFL draft this year. He'll fall down the list, but the list of quarterbacks going to the NFL is a bit different. So I'm going to go with KJ, for South Carolina Gamecocks. I think he would be a good fit in that system. On to our next one, the former Miami quarterback for the Hurricanes, Tyler Van Dyke. This is where I see a big leap for Tyler Van Dyke. Tyler Van Dyke, I think, is going to be on the move to the Big Ten. I think he is a Big Ten quarterback at heart right here. System change for this team. I think he's on the way to Columbus, Ohio, to Ohio State.
All right. I have him also going to the Big Ten, a new Big Ten team. Give me USC. I think that he goes from the East Coast to the West Coast. Like you mentioned, I think that, Will Howard definitely makes sense for him. Tyler Van Dyke, though, he's just been a quarterback that I cannot figure out. He's had his games, going the Texas A&M game. I think that's, if he plays like that for 12 games, I mean, he could definitely be one of the best quarterbacks. I think he just has to figure out the system that he's in. Miami is just an absolute dump that they're in. I just think that I don't know what can fix the curse that's on that Miami football program, but it's not going to be Tyler Van Dyke. So I think that with Caleb Williams leaving, it's going to be like USC is going to get one of these quarterbacks that we have on this list. I mean, it's 100%. I think Tyler Van Dyke is definitely going to be one of those guys that are in the lead for USC. So give me the Trojans. I think that he goes to the Big Ten nonetheless, though.
Well, Big Ten bound. We both think for Tyler Van Dyke. They're on to the next quarterback on the list is DJU. He is, well, I guess he was Oregon State's quarterback for a little while. But no, he's on the move once again from Clemson to Oregon State. I think it's about time. I think he just loves the color orange. Like that's really what I think. So I think he's going to stick with the team that's still the color orange. You just talked about him there. I think he's going to Miami. I honestly think that I could see DJU at Miami. Look, it's a party scene down there. DJU, come on, like it fits good. No, I think he's going to be the next quarterback there. I don't know what's going to turn Miami around. Maybe DJU. I have no idea. But I don't see him turning it around. But I feel like that's probably the best fit for him.
Well, great minds think alike. I also have Miami for DJU. I think he goes back to the ACC. I think that I think that he worked out well for Oregon State, but maybe he could go to Michigan State. That's where Jonathan Smith is going. I just don't really see him that. I don't think that he was tied to the head coach. I think it was just more of a program fit. Clemson didn't really want him anymore. Like, oh, we have Klubniak here, and Klubniak, he was okay. He was okay this season, but I think that DJU, he's going somewhere to the ACC. Maybe we see him go to Florida State. I think that Florida State would also be a top option for DJU if they miss out on Cam Ward. But I think that with Van Dyke leaving here, DJU goes on to Miami with the Canes.
Well, that is our last quarterback, I believe, on the list of quarterbacks.
Who knows if we'll have more?
Where is that quarterback going? We could have more quarterbacks surface, and we could have some new news on the potential of where these quarterbacks land here in the near future as we wind down the rest of this college football season and the bowl season coming next week. Next week starts bowl season. Next weekend is the first weekend of bowl, starting with the Myrtle Beach Bowl. The snoozer of them all bowl starts it off, and we work our way to some of the best bowl games of the season. But of course, next week we'll gas right through our bowl games for next week. We'll only talk about the bowl games of the week for that week there, so it's not too much thrown on the plate there. Tyler and I will be keeping track of our picks for those bowl games, and we will decide and find out. Not decide. We will find out who the winner.
Prize for this, maybe like a gift card or something. I don't know. It's Christmas season.
Little prize there to see who's gonna pick the most correct. And maybe one of us goes undefeated in the bowls. Who knows? I mean,
if you do, then I'm up in the prize to a jersey. Why not? I'll say right now, if one of us goes undefeated, well, honestly, we might even put a jersey on the line. Who knows?
All right. Well, we'll see what we do. We'll talk about it and discuss it. We'll let you guys know next week what is on the list for the prize. What is the trophy for the bowl season? So we will see you guys again next week for the bowl season start for part 1 of it next week on the 16th. So we will get that underway next Saturday and bring that to you guys. But other than that, we will see you guys next Saturday.